With the crisis in Ukraine, cyberwarfare is on full display and demonstrates our reliance on network technology in today's world. Our networks keep communication up, the power on, banks connected, our water safe, and businesses running, just to name a few. If they go down or are compromised, it spells trouble. I'm your host, Rick Rutter, and joining me today are two of Juniper's security experts, Kate Adam and Jose Porto, to share how cyberwarfare has security concerns on everyone's mind. Let's start with Kate. Since the conflict began, what have you and your team noticed?
Well, we've seen, attacks increase every year, but specifically since the start of this conflict, they've risen even more so. And it's interesting because we have seen a lot of very different targets, a lot more attacks targeting critical infrastructure, government, internet service providers, healthcare, hospitals. Basically, the attacks on these services that countries, not just those involved in the conflict, but just countries in general, and a lot more businesses shifting their focuses to security. How can they secure their networks, their data, the things that make their businesses run, the things that provide those critical services?
That makes a lot of sense. And so it kind of answers like why this is happening. Jose, I'd be very curious to know from your perspective too. Is this a reason for businesses to be more concerned?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's a reason for businesses to be concerned. There's some really interesting things that we're seeing that are happening. First of all, you see that the Ukrainian government that is battling Russia, they're not only doing it on air, land, sea, but they're using the cyber front as part of the cyber attacks, and they're using this as an integrated part of their arsenals. Just as they use troops and tanks to attack, they're using cyber attacks. And Russia has an established history of using cyber attacks. In fact, in Ukraine, they've done it in the past. In 2017. They knocked down federal agencies, transport systems, and even the radiation monitors of the Chernobyl site. So there's a lot of concern in the global community that they can, now that other countries are sanctioning what is happening in the war, that they could actually be attacked. So, in the recent months, we've seen multiple global agencies that have advised enterprises of all sizes, really, to see how they can improve their security infrastructure. In February, for instance, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, in conjunction with the FBI, issued a joint advisory, basically providing some details on the type of attacks that Ukraine is doing and warning the risk of attacks from Russia. In March, we also saw President Joe Biden issue an urgent statement warning that in response to the sanctions, Russia could retaliate with cyber threat activity. So, it's for these reasons that organizations really need to take a hard look, be vigilant, and see how they can protect themselves.
Makes a lot of sense. And so are there certain or specific attacks or kinds of attacks that people should be focused on?
Well, the attack surface has increased significantly over the past couple of years, right? It's been really exacerbated by the explosion of remote working, the adoption of cloud-delivered services during the pandemic, and now with the war happening, this is it's becoming more complex. But at the end of the day, there are some traditional types of attacks that the organization should be looking at. For instance, email continues to be the main vector of attack. So phishing attacks and where the bad guys are leveraging the charity scams, fake news, or they have a URL that is infected. So those are definitely areas that organizations need to be looking at. Ransomware attacks is another a type of attack that is extremely dangerous, right? They can encrypt the data, they can demand a high ransom, and the files can be locked, or they can even threaten to release the files to the web. So this is an area that also organizations need to be aware of. From an availability perspective, denial of service attacks are also very important, and something that we've seen a spike, and they can have a big impact because they can disrupt the business. And they can disrupt websites, email servers, and can really bring businesses to a complete halt. And the final one that I'll talk a little bit about it. It's really a combination of all of these, but it's really advanced persistent threat attacks, because they can be involved in multiple stages, variety of attack techniques, and they can be very difficult to be identified, right? Once they get into the network, they can stay dormant, they can stay on stealth mode, and can be undetected for a long time before they actually go and have an attack. And a lot of the big breaches in the last years started with APT attacks. So those, I would say, are some of the main types of attacks that organizations need to be aware of.
I think it all starts with planning for the worst, right? Plan for that breach to happen. Have a disaster recovery plan. Have backups in place, especially when ransomware is involved. Have an incident response plan. So you can act quickly, get the right stakeholders in the room, begin that process ASAP, because literally every minute counts. There are, especially when we're talking about critical infrastructure, patching may not always be an option, right? Downtime sometimes is worse than being compromised. And so having an idea of what assets you have and which are more important to have up, which are more important to have protected, and then having a plan in place, kind of working backwards from that incident response plan for a breach, but implement protections to minimize that likelihood, making sure that you're able to detect, making sure that you've got some automation in place so that if a critical system that, needs to be taken offline ASAP can be, and it doesn't have to wait for a manual approval if one isn't necessary.
Cyber defense is a long game, right? So it requires sustained strategic investment. It's not just a last minute bolt on, right? So we made some recommendations, but I think, ultimately, long term, I think organizations should be striving to implement zero trust architecture, right? This is it's a security model that has been out there for some time now. It's probably started talking about this in the early 2010s, right? But it's become more prevalent recently. And especially with some of the guidance from the NIST special publication 800-207. And this is really something that, if you implement all of the recommendations, those are parts of the zero trust architecture. The zero trust architecture, it's basically, it's a really drastic departure from the previous models where you trust but verify. Before that, it involved really defending the perimeter and assuming that anything inside the network was safe. With the zero trust, the idea here is that you basically, you shouldn't automatically trust anything outside or inside and the perimeter. So instead, you have to really make sure that you authenticate before you make any connection to any of the applications. I think this is a radical kind of shift, but it's something that if organizations can strive towards that, it will make their remote workers, it will make their cloud applications much safer. And, so this is something that we also recommend moving forward.
You explained a lot about all of these recommendations. And so what I would like to understand too is, how should companies and teams be working on a support system or a support structure? I can't imagine, a IT team is able to do all of this. Who do they need to have as part of their support structure?
Yeah, it's not just IT teams, right? Any IT team also obviously includes the InfoSec counterpart. Executives, being able to communicate to executives is very important, especially in the midst of a potential breach. Legal, having legal involved, having HR involved, right? But then back to what Jose said, having employees involved too, right? There are certain things that employees need to be made aware of to better protect themselves, to better protect the applications and the data that they may be accessing on the network that they're accessing, that they are using to access those things. But then also, any IT team has a multitude of vendor technology that makes up their networks. And especially where security vendors are involved, security vendors are a great support system as well, right? Because sometimes there are incident response services that can be utilized. Sometimes there are there's version control and patching that can happen, upgrades to systems that may have been overlooked when the last change management came through. And so those support teams, those vendors can certainly help, and they have expertise as well. And then also peer organizations, right? So no one organization is in this by themselves, regardless of the industry that they're in. Really, we're as a society, we're kind of all in this whole, cyber defense thing together. And so, going to peers, asking what they've done, lessons that they've learned, sharing that intelligence, sharing indicators of compromise, that goes so far in helping not just protect that individual organization, but keeping us all safe. It's kind of like herd immunity, when it comes to attacks, right? We're all in this together. We're all trying our best, and so we all have to work as a team and not as individuals.
So as we talk about resources, I've read a lot about Threat Labs and used that. Could you tell me a little bit more?
Juniper has invested considerably in our Threat Labs team. We have a team of specialists that are constantly monitoring the threat landscape, and they actually have a direct engagement in terms of developing our security functionality and features. So the Threat Labs has blogs and is constantly generating new reports. So we would definitely recommend that folks that are listening to this would join the conversation with us and check out the blogs that they're developing.
To add on to that, Jose, too, not only does our Juniper Threat Labs do research and put that research back into the detection models that we have within the Juniper security products, but also Juniper Threat Labs is part of larger organizations such as the Cyber Threat Alliance, the Cloud Security Alliance, who they all share threat information with other vendors who are also members, making sure that there's some level of group protection, regardless of the security vendor you go through. But what's important, I think, is just leveraging the research that's out there, keeping a pulse on what's going on in the threat landscape. What are attackers doing? How have they evolved? Because it really is, unfortunately, a very complicated game of chess between the defenders and the attackers. And so as much as you can learn about who you are protecting against, that's going to benefit you and how you protect against them.
Kate, Jose, thank you both for sharing your insights, your recommendations. For everyone out there, I hope this was helpful. Now more than ever, network security should be top of mind for all of us. And if you have any questions or would like to learn more, we're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.